the body. We are in receipt of the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1306 and House Bill number 4673. This is the measure about the postponement of the 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. May we recognize the chairperson of the Senate panel, Senator J.V. Ejercito, to give the highlights of the conference committee report.
Our distinguished colleague from the city of San Juan, Senator J.V. Ejercito, is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues in the Senate. I have the honor of submitting for ratification the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1306 and House Bill number 4673, or an act postponing the December 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9164 as amended, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes. Mr. President, I happen to substitute for the chair of the Committee on Electoral Reforms, who is out of the country, Senator Amy Marcos. But this morning, along with Senators Francis Chis Escudero, Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay, and Senator Sherwin Gatchalian represented the Senate in the bicameral conference committee during the meeting held this morning. As chairperson of the Senate panel, allow me to report the provisions of the present reconciled bill accompanying our conference committee report. The conference committee agreed to use the Senate version as the working draft. After much deliberation, it was agreed upon by the members to hold the next synchronized Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on the last Monday of October 2023. The subsequent Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections will then be conducted every 3 years thereafter. The Senate and the House of Representatives panels approved the possible changing of the date of last Monday of October 2023 for several crucial considerations, which include: first, there is a precedence of holding the synchronized Barangay and SK elections in October. Second, the date usually falls on the school break of youth voters and will enable them to participate in choosing their leaders in the community. Third, it will be more cost-effective with reference to the position paper and computation of the Commission on Elections, which was submitted to the Committee on Electoral Reforms. Consequent to this change in the date of next elections, Section 2 of the Conference Committee report now provides that the term of office of the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan officials elected under this proposed measure shall commence at noon of November 30, 2023, next following their next election. With respect to the provision on appropriations, the Conference Committee adopted Section 4 of the House version. Further, Section 5 of the Senate version, which directs the Commission on Audit to submit an audit report to Congress on the budget used for the postponed December 5, 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections within 90 days from the effectivity of the law, was deleted. It will be available anytime, especially during the budget deliberations. We can already ask the COMELEC. Mr. President, this humble representation is honored to present this conference committee report, which was the result of thorough deliberation and commitment to our constituents to pass a law that would promote the welfare of our barangays. Further, as chairman of the Senate Committee on Local Government, this would give us ample amount of time to revisit our laws and introduce amendments to further strengthen the roles and mandate of our barangay officials. At this juncture, Mr. President, allow me to extend my utmost gratitude to the chairperson of the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, Senator Amy Marcos, for her trust and confidence towards this representation in leading the Senate contingent in the bicameral conference. We laud her for staunchly shepherding the passage of Senate Bill number 1306 while ensuring that all issues and challenges are addressed from the committee hearing to the plenary debates up to this passage. We would also like to thank our colleagues who are members of the Bicameral Conference Committee for sharing their inputs and sound proposals that enabled us to produce a more acceptable version. We would also like to thank the House panel for meeting their counterpart halfway in every provision that we deliberated on. Lastly, this representation would like to thank this August Chamber for entrusting this task to me. Although it was hard, we hope that we were able to complete our task competently. With the permission of the body, I move that the joint explanatory statement on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1306 and House Bill number 4673 be read in toto into the record and that the Bicameral Conference Committee report be ratified. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Mr. President. The Senate Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel, is seeking the floor. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished minority floor leader,
For,
Senator Pimentel, is recognized.
Thank you for discussion, Mr. President. If the committee report could be subjected to just a brief discussion, with the permission of the sponsor of the BICAM report. I noticed that the final date is a date not found in the Senate version and also a date not mentioned in the House version. So may we know what is that final date and how was that date arrived at, Mr. President?
Actually, it was Senator Chis Escudero who proposed that the elections be not be held on December, no, for several reasons. Because for one, everybody is busy, and second, his first proposal is May of 2024, but the House contingent thought it might be too long already, no. So that's why we arrived at October 2023 because Senator Win, our very own Senator Gatchalian, pointed out that there was already a precedent, no, before that there was barangay and SK elections that were held in October. So that was the compromise. I would.
So what would be the new date, Mr. President, according to the BICAM report?
It will be last Monday of October 2023, Mr. President.
So pakicheck kayo, last Monday of October 2023. And of course, we also changed the start of the term of those to be elected in October 2023. What would be the start of their term, Mr. President?
Their term will start November 30, 2023.
So November 30, 2023.
Yes.
So that date was also just arbitrarily determined, Mr. President. It could have been early November, it could also be December, it could also be January.
Because, Mr. President, in 2007, in 2010, and 2013, barangay and SK elections were held, usually in October. In 2007, it was held in October 29, 2007. In 2010, October 25, 2010. And October 13, October 28, 2013. So that's why there was a compromise that there was already precedent, Mr.
Yes,
President.
on the date of the election, but on the start of the term, Mr. President, during those years was the start of the term of those elected also end of November of the year after the election.
Yes, it was decided it will be, the start of the term will be 1 month after the elections.
1 month after the election. Because if I remember our measure correctly, December, early December yon, and then the start of the term for those elected would be January 1. Diba? So, masabi na natin, less than 1 month pero more than 20 days from the election. I mean, if that formula or that period was observed also in the new dates that we are talking about, Mr. President.
I believe so. And then, Mr. President, Your Honor, and then the elections will be held 3 years thereafter, every 3 years. So that it will also not be in conflict with the upcoming national local election, the midterm elections in 2025, and presidential and national elections in 2028. So it will be 2027 and 2029, 26, sorry.
Pero nagtataka lang po ako, Mr. President, kasi yung, ano ba sinabi? Fourth Monday. Was it fourth Monday of October, no, Mr. President?
Yes, it's the last Monday of October.
The last Monday of. May I know the wording of the reconciled bill? Is it fourth Monday of October or last Monday of October? Kasi pwedeng magkaiba.
It's the
yun.
last Monday of October.
Last Monday, okay. Pero nagtataka lang po ako, Mr. President, na yung final date natin na last Monday of October 2023, ito ba ay nabanggit nung dito po sa ating kapulungan during the interpellation or ang unang banggit sa PEDSA ay doon na po sa BICAM?
Well, it was agreed upon that it will be October. As I mentioned, there's a precedent already. But to make it more practical so that the youth can be able to vote, it will be SEM break. October is usually SEM break. And last but not the least, we thought of having it last Monday so that it will be near the Undas, wherein people usually go home to their provinces, no, so that they will be able to vote. So it's for practicality reasons.
Yes po, narinig ko na po yung dahilan at yun yung narinig ng mga members ng Senate panel sa BICAM. Pero yung PEDSA ba na last Monday of October 2023 ay nabanggit ba dito sa kapulungan ng Senado habang panahon ng interpellation sa panukalang batas?
No, Your Honor, it was just discussed during the BICAM, Your Honor.
Okay, so that's why I had to intervene at this late stage, Mr. President, para marinig din natin how it was reasoned out, during the BICAM. So,
Likewise, it was original was really December
no.
of 2023, but some members of the BICAM thought that it will be too long already, and cost effectively, also according to COMELEC, October will be more practical if you'll compare it to December of 2023.
I have noticed, Mr. President, that the chairperson of the committee who sponsored the measure is not here,
That's
or
correct.
probably also did not lead the Senate panel during the BICAM.
That is correct.
How would she feel now if she will get to know that the version she defended here in the Senate was not the one defended by the panel during the BICAM?
Actually, because of technology, she was all monitoring, likewise, and gave the full authority because she requested, because of her trip to the United States. Actually, she was the one who's supposed to chair the bicameral conference committee. But because of her trip that cannot be moved, she just asked this representation just a few days before. But because of the urgency, I had to oblige. So, but she was monitoring earlier. Her staff were there. The conference, the committee secretary was updating her about the events, no, about the situation.
Oh, kasi yun lang po, Mr. President, yung ano naman yung pakiramdam nga nung ating chairperson na siya yung nag-sponsor, nagdepensa nung panukalang batas, pinanindigan niya yung December 2023. And then, ngayon pagbalik niya, magiging October 2023. But if that is the stand of the Senate panel, and should it be ratified here in the plenary, that would be the will of the House already. Was the minority represented, Mr. President, during the bicameral conference meeting?
Your Honor, Minority Leader, actually, I was talking to Senator Risa. We were waiting for her, but unfortunately, the bicameral conference was simultaneous with the Commission on Appointments, and Senator Chis Escudero said that she already talked to Senator Risa that we will go ahead. Already. But we gave time before we really started the bicameral conference committee earlier.
Well, yun na. Okay, anyway, because dalawa lang nga kami, tapos sabay-sabay ang ating mga official duties and functions. Anyway, this has happened, and at this early stage, Mr. President, let me now register my no vote to the bicameral conference committee report. But thank you, Mr. Sponsor, Senator
Thank you,
JV,
Minority Leader.
Thank you very much. I believe Senator Risa Ontiveros, Deputy Minority
Mr. President, Senator Alan Cayetano,
Yes.
listed first, if with the indulgence of our Deputy Minority Leader.
All right.
Yeah.
Senator Alan Cayetano,
Mr.
sir.
President,
Be recognized.
would our good friend, the senator from San Juan, allow a few questions and clarification?
Certainly, to our my good friend from Taguig and Pateros.
Am I correct, dear sponsor and Mr. President, that SK candidates, the age is between 18 and 24 years old?
Yes, that is correct, according to the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Law, Mr. President. And those who can vote, just to add, is up to 30 years old, Mr. President.
And that was a long discussion by this chamber and by both houses and by the palace in other postponements, precisely to find exactly the right age to be able to train the leaders of tomorrow by having a youth leadership actual training, not just an apprenticeship program, by having them in the Sangguniang Kabataan, no? Versus others who were advocating to actually abolish the SK system, no? Correct?
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor.
In fact, this representation, which was in that Congress, strongly objected kasi sabi nila, maraming corruption sa SK, therefore, i-abolish na lang ang SK. Sabi ko, mas maraming corruption yung matatanda, edi dapat i-abolish na yung buong gobyerno kung yun ang dahilan, di ba? So, at saka sino ba nagtuturo sa mga bata kung hindi yung matatanda din? But the point I wanted to make there is that, is it correct that the House of Representatives proposed and we accepted to remove the provision allowing those who are qualified now to still run in the election next October?
Yes, that is correct. That was not accepted by the House contingent, where the justification, Your Honor, is that it might violate the SK reform law itself, and we will, in effect, we will be allowing disqualified candidates to run for office, Your Honor. So that is the provision that was changed, no? And that was not accepted by the House contingent.
I do
Your
not
Honor.
blame the sponsor and the Senate panel, but remember, Senator Pia and I are also not part of the majority. We are in the independent group, independent minority. So you can also invite us sa BICAM when needed, especially when the provisions to be discussed will really deal with the future of our people. If I can just make this point to my good friend, no? And of course to our dear colleagues, I think the best basis or the best, yung paghuhugutan natin ng stand natin dito is simple lang. Anong gagawin natin kung anak natin ang involved? No? So whether we're talking about vape, isabong, whether we're talking about UPCAT, no? Na kung saan ayaw mag-exam ng UP, samantalang face-to-face na ang mga DepEd, samantalang ang civil service, 300,000 yung na-exam. So yung mga taga-Philippine High School, na dating 95 to 99% ang passing, bumaksak ng mga 60% ang passing. Paano kung anak mo yung taga-Philippine Science at pangarap niya yon at ngayon, hindi makapasok ng UP dahil ayaw nila mag-UPCAT. So the same thing now, I hope our colleagues will understand, I do understand that we need this bill, pero parang na-hostage tayo ng House of Representatives. Kasi ngayon, lahat ng mga SK na 24 years old, hindi na pwedeng tumakbo next year. So ninakaw natin at nanakawin natin ang pangarap nila. So kung ikaw ay tumakbong kagawad ng 18 years old, nung last election, 21 ka pa lang. Pero kung 21 ka nun, at nagbabalak ka na ngayon na mag-chair, 24 ka. At kung yan talaga pangarap mo, because we postponed it, we are now disqualifying them. So baliktad, instead of extending and then the law having compassion and thinking about the future of these young people, total hindi sila appointed, elected sila, di ba? But I thank the gentleman because, and the Senate President, because yesterday, together with Senator Sani Angara, they in fact gave language that will make sure that this is not a rider, no? And the House of Representatives should have seen that. And kung may magque-question, mas gusto ko ng question nila sa korte, pero hindi na nakawan ng pangarap itong mga 24 years old, rather than ipapasa natin ngayon. Which goes to my point earlier today, Mr. President, parang damned if we do and damned if we don't tayo. Because last minute nag-BICAM and today, so I understand the good chair, Senator Ejercito, na kapag nag-deadlock kanina, matutuloy ang eleksyon sa December. Kapag ka naman hindi nag-deadlock, yung napakaganda nating proposal ay hindi naman may tutulak. But one reason that I support the postponement, although in general, I do not support postponements of any election because, you know, this is affront to the democratic process and our democracy. Diba? You cannot just extend people. You have to respect the mandate of the people. But I do agree with the timing. Kung ang election is October to December, every time we just finish either a presidential or a senatorial, congressional, and local election, it's just too tedious and creates many problems. So I'm hoping this is really the last postponement, and the date seems to be in order, meaning we'll have a senatorial and a gubernatorial, mayoral, congressional election in 2025, then October 2026 yung barangay. We'll have a presidential election all the way down to ang ating mga city and municipal officials in 2028. Then we'll have a barangay in October 2029. But may I move forward that concept as we talk about opportunities for our people? Alam niyo po yung mayaman, napakaraming opportunities for youth leadership. Napakaraming apprenticeship program, sa negosyo, sa politika, all kinds of leadership sa mga churches, etc. Pero ang mga mahihirap, ito ang chance nila maging involved sa barangay. And although those naman who are turning 18, 17, 18, and all the way to 24 can participate, still, kung yun ang pangarap ng anak mo, how do we now tell them after we pass this law na, sorry, never ka nang magiging SK or never ka nang pwedeng tumakbo kasi ayaw ng House of Representatives na sabihin may rider, no? So maybe this can be a lesson to us, Mr. President, that if we do the BICAM a few days before, we will have more bargaining power to force or to negotiate with our counterparts in the House regarding the provisions that I think are well thought of coming from this chamber, no? So thank you very much, my dear friend, and I do thank you. Sabay-sabay tayo, budget hearing, CA. You're a member of the CA, but you took time out. So I thank you for working hard and finishing that. And hopefully this postponement will do some good for us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you also to my very good friend for well taken your observations and
Mr.
manifestations.
President.
Well taken.
Yes, Senator Cayetano. Pia Cayetano.
Thank you. Mr. President, I'm forced to take the podium over here despite the objection of Senator Angara. In the interest of proper positioning, because there was one gentleman there, one in the middle, so para makita nyo kaming lahat. Kasi I wasn't sure if the gentleman, my brother from Taguig and Pateros, was going to continue. So anyway, I'm already here. With the permission of the sponsor, the gentleman from San Juan, may I propound some questions and share my thoughts? Like many bills, all of us will I think can admit that we study the bills carefully that are within our committees, and of course we are familiar with the bills that we filed. And there are many other bills that we just start to learn about when we hear the debates on the floor or we attend the hearing. So this bill is one of them for me, and there was a very important provision that was being discussed outside the halls of the Senate, well, outside the plenary hall. It was in fact in the lounge, and this is the very same provision that the gentleman from Taguig and Pateros was discussing with the sponsor. Because I was the one who brought it up upon the request of my brother. I brought it up with the Senate President, and then we ended up having a discussion with the chairman of the Committee on Finance, more from the legal aspect. As lawyers, we discussed this: is it a rider? Will it be considered, well, for the information of those who are watching us, a rider is something that is alien to the topic, so it should not be there. So we discussed all of this, and we came up with a solution. As far as I know, it was actually the recommendation of Senator Angara, and the Senate President thought it was a great idea. It was to amend the title so that the title is not just about the extension. Is it the extension? What is the original title? The postponement of the election, but it's now an amendment of the law. And I regret to hear, I just assumed that okay na yun. And it goes back to, I don't assume bad faith on anyone's part. Once you're in the BICAM, we know that our colleagues do the best that they can, but it goes into the concern raised by the minority floor leader that was the minority present? Did they have the opportunity to discuss this? The concern of the gentleman from Taguig, as the saying goes, ano nangyari? Di ba? Ano nangyari doon? Dahil maliwanag na yun eh, and I feel so bad. I will just use the example that the senator from Taguig and Pateros used. Sigurado ako, mga kasama, kung anak natin yun, paglalaban natin yun. Eh yung mga SK na kilala ko, parang anak-anak ko na rin sila kasi ka-age nila yung mga anak ko. So wala akong anak na SK, to be clear, no? Pero andyan ang mga SK ng Bulacan, tayo kayo. O, ayan. So, alam nyo, for our colleagues and those watching who are not familiar with what the issue is, because pinospone natin, yung mga magbe-birthday, possible na overage na sila. So, napakasimple nung amendment na yon, na dahil magiging overage sila, pagbigyan naman natin na for the next coming election, let's consider them qualified kasi hindi nila kasalanan na nag-birthday sila. Kasalanan natin na pinalitan natin yung deadline, pinalitan natin yung date. So nakakaiyak na hindi ito, that this was not carried. Nakakaiyak talaga. Again, wala akong anak na SK, pero may mga anak akong nag-graduate. May anak akong nag-board exam. Yung maisip ko lang na yung mga na-cancel ng board exam, they have to study again. Okay, ang hirap mag-aral ulit ha. For those of us who took the bar exam, board top-notcher ng UP, the minority floor leader, board top-notcher, bar top-notcher, kaya hindi ako pinansin, tinawag ko ng board. Bar top-notcher, minority floor leader. Ang hirap mag-aral for the bar exam, di ba? Ang hirap mag-aral for the board exam. During the pandemic, a lot of board exams were postponed. Can you imagine studying, postponed? Ang hirap na nga nun, pero sige na lang, at least may chance ka pa rin mag-take ng exam. Eh ito, yung opportunity mo to run, nag-birthday ka, tapos na, I feel so bad, Your Honor, kasi if it was not time-bound, I will plead to all of you na let's not approve this BICAM report. Kasi it's awful what we did to these young people. It is awful. It is not fair. Kagagawan natin to deprive them of this. So I now will have to withhold my, the time for voting is over, but now I regret that in whatever way I can express my dismay for this BICAM report, I express my dismay. And I know it is not the fault of our colleague. Wala ho akong sinisisi, pero we are all responsible kung paano nangyari to. Minamadali natin. With all due respect, wala yung chairman. We all have reasons, no? I know the sudden chairman did his best, pero we are in this situation that we deprived these SKs of their opportunity. And I agree with the gentleman from Taguig and Pateros. For people who are not born into families that can provide them with all the what do we call them, extracurricular activities, minsan yung SK na lang ang kanilang one and only opportunity. My dear kumpare, SK bang anak mo si Janela? Nag-SK ba siya? Okay. Napatingin lang ako dahil you were listening intently to my speech. Naisip ko lang na baka isa sa mga anak mo. Pero marami sa SK dumaan. I'm very proud na ang isang counselor natin, syempre I can only speak for Taguig, no? But Alan, di ba yung isang counselor natin, marami pala, hindi lang pala isa, mga sa SK nang galing, and they probably will be the future congressmen and congresswomen of Taguig City, maybe the mayor, maybe whatever, and we deprive them of that opportunity. So may magagawa pa ba tayo? O sasabihin na lang natin, sorry, deadline, wala na tayong magagawa. Sakit eh. Sorry ang haba, no? Pero yun ang tanong ko, may magagawa pa ba tayo?
No, but Your Honor, I hear the sentiments and I understand the sentiments and frustration of our colleague from Taguig and Pateros. But likewise, be rest assured that I'm also one of the authors of the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Law, and be rest assured that we will there will still be other youth, no, that will be given the chance. And also, wala rin kami anak na pwedeng tumakbo because of the anti-political dynasty
To be
provision.
clear nga na wala naman tayong mga anak,
Yes,
ano?
because of the anti-political dynasty provision.
Hindi nga, but I'm also saying na for those who don't know the law,
The law.
mabuti nang maliwanag. Baka sabihin may anak kaming tumatakbo. Wala tayong lahat na anak ng mga tumatakbo. Kahit pamangkin o kahit sino pang kakilala, personally, wala. Baka pwede na lang natin amendahan yung batas din and for one period in time, dagdagan ng 2 years because why would you deprive? And I know talaga yung iba dyan, pangarap na pangarap nila yon. Ang ganda naman pangarap, di ba, manilbihan sa bayan and then ang tulay nila is sa pagiging SK. So baka pwede natin pag-aralan yon and make it also a priority measure if only an interim solution to the problem that we created. We created it, Your Honors, by passing this BICAM version.
That is correct. Be rest assured, Your Honor, that as one of the principal authors of the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Law, I think it's ripe for amendments so that we can make the necessary fine-tuning and refinements. Now that it has been implemented, we have seen some flaws. So I agree with you that it's about time that we really need to amend the Sangguniang Kabataan Reform Law so that it will be more effective in training our future leaders, Your Honor.
Pero kasama po tong issue na tayo naman nag-create. Kasi before this becomes a law, wala yung problemang to. So ito, we will create this. We will effectively create this when this becomes a law. We created it. So sana kasama ho yan sa listahan natin at mabigyan ng priority.
Yes,
Thank you very much po.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you very much also to our distinguished senator from Taguig and Pateros.
Mr. President, the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator
Yes,
Risa
do you
Ontiveros,
recognize
seeking the floor.
Senator
Yes,
Risa
please.
Ontiveros or Deputy
Thank
Minority?
you.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. For the record also, I would like to register my no vote to the BICAM version. I would also like to express my thanks to the good sponsor for very kindly understanding why I simply could not humanly, physically attend the BICAM meeting this morning, which coincided with 5 scheduled Commission on Appointments hearings. Yesterday, Mr. President, just to trace the sequence of events, right after I was elected to the BICAM committee for the Senate minority, I asked our good majority leader what was the schedule of the committee, of the hearing or the meeting of the BICAM. And in fairness to the good majority leader, as of that point in time, last night of our session, we still did not have the schedule. And so finally, when the schedule was set, either late last night or early this morning, it was impossible already to make alternative arrangements para physically makadalo at makalahok sa committee, sa BICAM meeting. Pero I still register my no vote, Mr. President, good sponsor, with all due respect, dahil sa mga issue na ni-raise ko nung aking maikling interpellation after the lengthy interpellation of the minority leader, including and especially at this point in time, yung posisyon ng Akbayan Youth, ng SIAN or Center for Youth Advocacy and Networking, at yung SK Youth Network, the point made very strongly by the minority leader sa kanilang interpellation na ipagkakait nga natin sa isang buong henerasyon ng mga SK leader o potential SK leader yung pagkakataon na makapamuno sa ating mga sangguniang kabataan. At the very most, Mr. President, I was willing to consider if iuurong lamang hanggang Mayo sa susunod na taon. And I had the commitment also of the good sponsor, the gentle lady from Ilocos Norte, na susubukan ulit iyon sa BICAM. Nga lamang dahil huli na itakda yung schedule ng BICAM meeting ay physically, humanly naging imposible. Pero muli, Mr. President, salamat sa pag-unawa ng good sponsor, and I just make of record my no vote to the BICAM version. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Be rest assured that I personally, would have wanted also May, but it was a compromise kasi December 2023, so naging October.
Mr. President, Senator Robin Hood Padilla is also seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague from the province of Camarines Norte, Senator Robin Hood Padilla is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, mahal na tagapangulo at sa ating pong pinunong mayorya. A'udhu billah minasyaitanir rajim. Ako po ay gusto ko lamang pong ipaalam sa ating lupon na katulad po ng unang pagkakataon na narinig ko po ang ating magaling na kasama magmula sa Cavite, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla. Una ko po siyang narinig na nagsalita na patungkol po dito sa eleksyon neto. At sinabi po niya na totoo nga na baka magsitanda na yung mga bata. At katulad po ng kinakatakot din ng atin pong magaling na senador mula po sa Pateros, Taguig, na si Senator Alan Cayetano. Ganon din po, at ganon din po naging posisyon ko na ako po'y hindi po pumapayag na ma-postpone. Ngunit nakitaan ko po ito ng napakagandang oportunidad sapagkat sa aking pong pagsasagawa ng aking pagdinig sa komite ng amendments and revision, napakadami na po talaga na masasabi po natin ng mga pinagpipitagang mga tao katulad po nila dating Senador Juan Ponce Enrile, sila Attorney Estelito Mendoza, at sa mga naging mga guest pa po natin dyan, na talagang humihingi na po ng amendment at revision sa konstitusyon. At ngayon po, narinig ko po ang boses ng ating minorya di independiente, ang magaling pong senadora magmula po sa Pateros at Taguig, na si Ma'am Senador Pia Cayetano, na humihingi po ng amendment. Kaya kinukuha ko na po ang pagkakataon na ito para sabihin po sa ating lupon na mas maganda po siguro isabay na po natin dyan sa eleksyon na yan ang paghingi po natin ng mungkahi ng mga taong bayan at gumawa na po tayo ng referendum at tanungin na po natin sila, isabay na po natin dyan kung kailangan na po ba talagang tingnan po natin kung kailangan na pong baguhin ng saligang batas. Tanungin na po natin ang taong bayan. Katunayan po, nilapitan ko po ang ating pinunong minorya at ako po'y sumangguni sa kanya kung siya po ba ay kukontra sa akin o papayag. Sinabi naman po ng ating pinuno na si Senator Coco Pimentel sa minorya na maaari po ito at pwede. Kaya gusto ko lamang pong ipaalam sa ating lupon na ako po ay magpapasa ng panukala na kung tayo po ay pwedeng sumabay sa eleksyon na ito para tanungin po ang taong bayan para sa isang referendum. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, distinguished colleague from Bicol, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Siguro, if I may be allowed to just comment a bit on the SK Reform Bill, I was no longer, I believe I had resigned at that time when it was tackled. I was not a member of the Senate at that time when it was discussed. But one of the proposals that I had in mind, I don't know if our dear distinguished colleagues heard this from me in several occasions, that the SK, with due respect to the SK, I feel that it should just be, my personal opinion, one seat in the barangay council, a qualified youth representative elected in the barangay with the barangay captains and kagawads. Bale, kung 7 yata ang members ng council, magiging 8 po siya na elected councilor but representing the youth. Rather than coming out with the whole SK Council na napakahirap na i-manage. And so many times the DILG tells us, talagang dadalawa lang nag-attend sa council kasi nag-aaral yung iba sa iba't ibang parte ng Pilipinas at tumatanda na rin sila. That's a real reform that we can do and make an amendment to. I think that would be much better. These are just thinking out of the box, Your Honors, para there's less bureaucracy, less, expenses for government pagka ganyan ang nangyayari. They become part of the council na, elected member of the council. Just my 2 cents worth, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, also would just like to put on record that when the amendment introduced by our dear colleague, Senator Alan Cayetano, I was also one of those who joined the entire body in putting that particular amendment. And while I agree totally, solidly, with the amendment proposed in this August chamber, we also agreed, Mr. President, in electing our representatives in the bicameral conference. And so we put and place our trust in them. And let me take this opportunity to commend our sponsor, Mr. President, Senator J.V. Ejercito, who is also taking all these questions, Mr. President. And we laud his efforts, our good friend, our seatmate, the good one, according to the gentleman behind me. And so, Mr. President,
Who's the cute one?
But we all know who's the cute one, Mr. President.
Yes,
So, Mr. President, again, we trusted them, we appointed them, we voted for our bicameral conferees to represent this August chamber, and so we are submitting to the wisdom of our designated representatives, Mr. President. At this juncture, Mr. President, I move that we ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1306 and House Bill number 4673, and let the text of the joint explanation be inserted into the record of the chamber.
Yes, and we take note of the negative vote of Senators, our distinguished minority floor leaders, Senator Coco Pimentel, Senator Risa Ontiveros, and Senator Pia Cayetano, I believe. I'm not sure who else. If Alan is okay? Yes. Si Robin Hood, okay? Therefore, there being no other objections to the motion, the Bicameral Conference Committee report on disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1306 and House Bill number 4673 is hereby ratified. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture and with the